Want to welcome everybody once again to Sunday School on Facebook here at Brister Baptist Church. I hope everybody's had a good week. It's good to see Steve. It's good to see Brother Jeremy. And we're doing this on a Thursday afternoon, a Thursday evening. So, with that in mind, we've been looking at the parables in Sunday School, some of the parables of Christ. But I'm going to take a break from that this week and look at something else. Something that I've really been missing since we've started doing church on Facebook and hadn't been in church. And it's amazing that sometimes Sunday school lessons go along with sermons. Well, I've been working on this Sunday school lesson for about a week. And then this afternoon, Lisa told me to look at the church Facebook page, that there's a Facebook post about music. And that goes hand in hand with this Sunday school lesson. So whoever posted it, I was glad they did it. Once again, this is Thursday evening and you won't see it till Sunday morning. But if you didn't see it, go back and look at that Facebook post. It's about music. But for the last 6 weeks, I've really been missing the music that we hear here on Sunday morning. And we hear some great music, and I even talked to my good friend Brenda Kyle about it. And it seems like a number of people are really missing the music that we hear at Brister. And I've told y'all this before, but growing up and until I came to Brister, I never liked church music. It just seems like when I was a kid, we'd sing those old hymns and they would go on and on and on, and I just did not care for church music. But once I began to listen to church music and once I started up here, I really began to appreciate the songs and the lyrics of the songs and the meaning of it. And I realized that it prepared our heart for worship. Our heart was being prepared to hear a message. But a lot of those songs had a great message in them in themselves. And then, like I normally do, I began to take church music for granted. It was so good, I'd come up here and Miss Nancy and Brother Rick, they'd have great music for us every Sunday, and I got to where I just took it for granted. But now that we hadn't heard any in 6 weeks, I'm really missing it. So I'm going to talk about some church music this morning. But not only is it good to prepare our hearts for worship by listening to church music, the Bible tells us that we need to do that. And in Psalms chapter 100, the 100th Psalm, and a lot of y'all are familiar with this. Just 2 short verses, Psalms 100, 1 and 2, tells us to make a joyful shout to the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. The Bible tells us to sing. Sing words to the Lord. Sing his praises. And that's what we do. And like I said, I didn't like it, but now I miss it a lot. I talked about this one Wednesday night, and I've sent out an email or 2 about it, but I've never talked about it in a Sunday school lesson. And there's some things that I'd like to tell you or visit or teach about this morning. There's 2 different songs that I heard once I started coming to Brister, and I love both the songs. But I heard some words in there that I really didn't understand or didn't know what it was. But the music meant so much to me, I couldn't wait to go home and study it. And the first song, and it's a great hymn, and it's an old hymn I found out, but it's Come Thy Fount of Every Blessing. It's a strong hymn, every verse, and it's good. But I have it here in the hymnal, and just in the 2nd verse, and I'm not going to sing this, but I'm just going to read a couple of stanzas of this verse, and this is Come Thy Fount of Every Blessing, and in verse 2 it says, Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. It says, Here I raise mine Ebenezer. And I had never heard of that. Like a lot of you, I've raised kids, I've raised cows, I've raised a garden. I raised a chicken one time with bad results. I'll never do that again. And we've all raised a lot of things, but to my knowledge, I had never raised an Ebenezer, and I couldn't wait to get home and study up what is an Ebenezer that they're talking about in this song. And it's an interesting story, and I encourage you to read all of 1 Samuel chapter 7, and we're not going to read it, but it's a very interesting chapter. And just briefly, the Israelites and the Philistines, they're at it again. They're fighting. They can't get along. And the Philistines are pretty tough at this point. And the Israelites are fearing for their lives. And they cry out to Samuel, the great prophet or the great judge, Samuel, and ask him to pray for God's protection in this upcoming battle. They know there's fixing to be a battle. And Samuel does it. He's the leader. He offers a sacrifice of a young lamb to the Lord. And he cried out to the Lord in prayer. And it was a sincere prayer. And hearing the prayer of Samuel, the Lord sent a loud thunder, kind of like what we had last night, but I feel like it was probably a pretty day. And this thunder came out of nowhere. And it shook up the Philistines. It confused the Philistines out on the battlefield. And because of this, the Israelites were able to defeat the Philistines. And they drove them out of their territory. They sent them packing. The Israelites won that battle. And Samuel's not one that forgets what God does for him. A lot of times when I pray to God and God answers my prayer, once it's answered, I go on. Samuel's not that type of man. And in 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12, 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12, we're told, and this gets back to the Ebenezer part that we sing about in that great hymn. 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 12 tells us, Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin, and called its name Ebenezer, saying, Thus far the Lord has helped us. They won the battle. Samuel wants to pay tribute to the Lord, and the first thing he does is he sets up a stone and he calls it Ebenezer. He says in that verse, the Lord has helped us. Now, the Hebrew meaning of Ebenezer is simply a stone of help. He set up a stone of help. What Samuel did here was he set up a monument to the Lord commemorating his help in driving out the Philistines. He set up a monument so that the people that came along after this would know that it was God that delivered them from the hands of the Philistines. And this is true when we sing the lyric, Here I raise mine Ebenezer. We're acknowledging to God and we're commemorating all that God does in our daily lives and in our times of need. We're raising an Ebenezer to God for his help. And we need to make it our goal every day to raise mine Ebenezer to the Lord. It's a great song. I need to do that every day. I need to thank the Lord for all that he's done for me and pay tribute to him. That's the first song that I heard that I really liked. The second song I want to talk about, is a song I'd never heard before I came to Brister. I don't know if it wasn't sang in churches that I went to or if it was sang and I didn't pay any attention to it. But when I came to Brister, I heard the song Beulah Land. And the first time I heard Rick Matthews sing Beulah Land, I knew I wanted to go to sweet Beulah Land. I knew that was the place I wanted to be. I mistakenly thought Beulah Land might be heaven, but I looked it up too because, like I say, I wanted to go to Beulah Land. Well, there's a story about Beulah Land and how that came to be in the Bible. And give you a little background on that. In Israel, way back in the day, had grown apart from God. And by 722 BC, the 10 northern tribes had fallen to the Assyrians. The 10 northern tribes were no more. Assyrians had taken over the land. The two southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin, they held on a little while longer, but they grew further and further away from God too, and they finally fell to the Babylonians in 586 BC. Israel, the promised land, the land of milk and honey, no longer was possessed by the Israelites by 586 BC, and that's a sad thing in Israel's history. Now, with that in mind, around 700 BC, Isaiah wrote the great book that he wrote in the Bible, a book of prophecy. And in Isaiah chapter 62, verses 1 through 4, they're interesting verses. I'm not going to read them all, but I encourage you to read them. But Isaiah in these verses talks about a time when Israel will be forsaken and it'll be a desolate place. And no doubt by 586 BC, and after many Israelites had been carried off to exile, Israel was defined by two terms, and that's forsaken and desolate. And you think there was nobody in their schools, there was nobody in their restaurants, there was nobody in their churches. It was a desolate place to be at that time. It was hard times in Israel. But Isaiah, in his great knowledge, great wisdom, assures the people that better times are coming, better days await you. And in Isaiah 62, verse 4, we're told the following, and we get a double meaning here. And I kind of like this because it hits close to home here at Brister. But in Isaiah 62, verse 4, we're told the following, and I need to turn there, be turning in your Bibles. Isaiah 62, verse 4 tells us, "You shall no longer be termed forsaken, nor shall your land any more be termed desolate, but you shall be called Hephzibah, and your land Beulah." Hephzibah. And we all, or I think a number of people know, there's a community between Emerson and Walkerville, the Hephzibah community. I think maybe Rick Matthews grew up in that community. There's a church, Hephzibah Church there. We tell people in the logging business, meet me in Hephzibah. A lot of people are familiar with it. I didn't know it was a place or a term in the Bible, so I had to look it up along with Beulah. And the meaning of the word Hephzibah means my delight is in her. And what Isaiah was saying there, that although you're desolate right now and you're forsaken right now, the Lord's going to delight again in you one day. He's going to remember you, and he's going to take delight in you. But also the term Beulah, this place that we sweet Beulah land, it means married or to take as one's wife. And what Isaiah was saying is one day you're going to have a close, intimate relationship with God once again. It's desolate and it's forsaken right now, but one day that intimate relationship is going to happen. And history tells us that after the Babylonian exile had taken place and come to an end, succeeding kings allowed the Jewish people to return to the Promised Land, to start rebuilding their country. And just as Isaiah had prophesied, the nation of Israel was once again married to God, and his delight was in her. Now, with that in mind, if your life right now, and a lot of people it is, if it seems desolate, if it seems forsaken, read these verses, chapter 62, 1 through 4 of Isaiah, and turn to the Lord and take comfort in the Lord. And during these trying times, I can think of no better place to be than in Hephzibah and Beulah land. And when you're there, be sure and raise that Ebenezer to the Lord and give him thanks for all that he's done for you. And like I say, these are two songs that I really liked, but I got to be careful on songs because sometimes I get to singing them and I don't think about the meaning, and I'm just going to put this out there for just a second. One Sunday we were singing the great song, where he leads me, I will follow. And after I got to thinking that, did I sit right back there in church and maybe tell a little lie and say, Lord, wherever you lead me, I'll follow? Because there's a lot of places the Lord might want to lead me that I don't want to go. And then there's the song, I surrender all. And I surrender all that I want to surrender, but maybe I don't surrender all that God thinks I should surrender. So we need to be careful when we sing all these songs. These songs have great meanings, and I like listening to them all. With that being said, just let me know what you think if we sing a song like Where He Leads Me, I Will Follow, or I Surrender All. Do you sing that song? Do you think about it when you sing it? It's made me think about it, so instead of having question and answer here at the end, just let me know this week what you do when those two songs are played. And with that being said, that ends the lesson, and I'll go to a few prayer requests. And once again, this is Thursday night, and things change between here now and Sunday. But keep the family of Ray Schultz in your prayers. This is Chris Schultz's dad, and Pam and Chris, or Mr. Ray, he passed away early this morning. His funeral is going to be Monday, and Pam and Chris will be headed out there probably Sunday. Pray for safe travels for them. Continue to keep keep Troy and Miss Louise in your prayers as they continue to fight their battle with cancer. Certainly, we need to remember the family of Mr. Jimmy and keep Miss Martha and all their family in your prayers. And we need to remember the workforce. There's a lot of people being laid off, a lot of oil field workers that are nervous about their jobs. People are needing to go back to work, so keep them in your prayers. As always, once again, I appreciate the opportunity to teach you. If you have a church home, that's great. If you don't, I'd sure like to see you here at Brister once we start back again. Thank you for this opportunity.